Kamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajadam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Apta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Yashabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vigna Vinasha Narasimha Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshitarini Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest,
one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Narayana Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author.
Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama sloke bhaktir bhavati naistikhi.
By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an
irrevocable
fact.
Nigamakalpatarur galitam phalam sukamukad amrita dravya samyutam pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavutaha. Oh, expert and thoughtful men.
Really, Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures. It is emanated from the lips of Srila Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice is already relishable for all, including the liberated soul.
Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Nama Pankajanabhaya Nama Pankajamaline Nama Pankajanetraya Namaste Pankajangre. Okay. So Hare Krishna everyone. Dandava pranams to you. So we are discussing chapter 16. The title is How Parikshit Received the Age of Kali. So we are just going through a little bit of recap of what we did last week, right? So we know that it began with Maharaj Parikshit as the emperor of the world. So the conversation between Suta Goswami and Saunaka Rishi. So and Suta Goswami is describing to Saunaka Rishi how Parikshit Maharaj became the emperor of the world right after Yudhishthira Maharaj and the Pandavas have all retired. So while describing Maharaj Parikshit's rule, these were some of the things which was discussed. The qualities of Parikshit Maharaj, the wife and sons of Parikshit, who Parikshit Maharaj married, and then how many sons? He had 4 sons, right? And the leader and the first son, the eldest is Janamejaya, who became emperor after Parikshit Maharaj. And then we also heard about Parikshit Maharaj's guru, and also we heard about what do you call, the sacrifices that Parikshit Maharaj performed, namely the Ashwamedha sacrifice, to ensure his rule of the entire Bharatvarsha is uncontested and secure. Then, after securing the kingdom, we heard about how Parikshit Maharaj set out across the world. Why? Because in the kingdom of Parikshit Maharaj, there were in Bharatvarsha at that time, right after the departure of Lord Krishna, we heard how Kali Yuga actually took root on this earth. And he was already able to see the influences of Kali in his kingdom. We described these influences also in the previous discussion. And due to this, he was wondering, I have already conquered the kingdom. I am the king, and therefore I have to ensure that these things are kept in check. So he set out directly. So when he set out, my mother, oh, okay. I'll call at 9:15. 9. Okay, so where was I? So he set out, and then he wanted to see, where is this enemy? Who is the one? Where is this person? Where is this Kali hidden? So therefore, he went to all the different kingdoms, and we heard how, well, while he was going to these different kingdoms, he was so well received by the various kings of the various provinces, and how they received him by giving lots of katha about Krishna and about the Pandavas. So he heard the glories of his forefathers, the Pandavas. He heard the glories of Krishna, and so much of loving feelings appeared in his heart as he was hearing these stories again and again. So in this, today, we are going to continue with this. So while Parikshit Maharaj went from kingdom to kingdom, he came across a very interesting scene, a scene which he was not expecting. So that also we discussed briefly in the last class, but we will go through them again. So basically, he'll come across this. You can see the picture here, how the personality of Kali is attacking the bull. The bull, there's a bull and there's a cow. So we will hear a bit more about this again. So today we are going to hear about how Dharma, the bull, poses his questions to Dharani, the cow. And then how Dharani, the cow, replies to Dharma, the bull. So initially I was thinking we can cover both and finish the chapter, but then, really, Srila Prabhupada gives so many nice purports here, and I really thought we have to cover this. So we will not be able to talk about Dharani, the cow today. We will finish it next session. So today we will just concentrate on the questions and the points raised by Dharma, the bull. And while this conversation is going on between Dharma and Dharani, the bull and the cow, that at that time Parikshit Maharaj arrives. So that's how the chapter will end. So we are recapping. So when Maharaj Parikshit left his capital, Hastinapura, and on his way to conquer the world, right, he saw the master of Kali Yuga. So how was the master of Kali Yuga dressed? He was dressed like a king, and he was, he was extremely opulent looking, but he was a very unsavory looking character. He didn't, it wasn't very attractive, his how he looked like, but yet he was dressed like a king. So Parikshit Maharaj saw that he was actually a Shudra disguised as a king, in fact lower than a Shudra. And what was he doing? So this scene over here describes what's happening. So but it's actually describing the later part of this scene. It hasn't come here. I couldn't find a picture where only Kali is attacking the cow and the bull. So anyway, Kali personified in the dress of a garb of a king is actually attacking Dharma. Who's Dharma? Dharma is religion personified, and he has taken the form of a bull, and he's wandering about, but he's only wandering about on one leg. His other three legs have been hacked away by this personality of Kali. He's now this Kali is now attacking the last standing leg of this bull. And the bull is standing and weeping. At the same time, there is also a cow standing next to the bull. And this cow is also in a very poor condition. She's not well taken care of. She's skinny and she's crying. Tears are crying. And in this way, this is the scene where Parikshit Maharaj came across. So you can see here, and hurting the legs of the cow and bull, the king at once caught hold of him to deal sufficient punishment. And then we heard also, normally someone who's doing, in Vedic culture, someone who's doing this to a cow, we all know that the sin of killing a cow is equivalent to the sin of killing a Brahmana. So to hurt a cow, you can imagine, is a very, very high sin. And normally the punishment is a swift death. So when Saunaka Rishi heard from Suta Goswami that Maharaj Parikshit is dealing sufficient punishment, and he was thinking, oh, it's not death, it's just punishment. Now this is unique. This is unheard of. So he could understand that the situation is not an ordinary situation. So Saunaka Rishi inquired, why did Maharaj Parikshit simply punish him? Since he was the lowest of the Shudras, having dressed as a king and having struck a cow. So first he was a Shudra, and the Shudra was dressing like a king, pretending to be a king. Now that itself is a terrible sin. And on top of that, he dared to strike the cow and the bull. So why is he simply punishing him and not killing him? So he could understand it wasn't ordinary. Something is interesting over here. So then he asked, please describe all these incidences if they relate to the topics of Lord Krishna. So he was not interested if it was something mundane. So he knows Suta Goswami will not raise these points unless it had a relationship with Krishna in some way. So therefore he asked, okay, please relate them if they are relating to the topics of Krishna. So we discussed a bit about this point also last week, about how Krishna Katha is actually, Prabhupada makes the point about how we should spend our time not talking nonsense about Prajalpa and all that, especially when we are doing services. We should try as much as possible to speak Krishna Katha. So then we are continuing today. The personality of religious principles, Dharma. So while this scene is happening, before Parikshit Maharaj came, now this is a bit of a recap. Just now the verse was bringing us to the future when Parikshit Maharaj already came to the scene. Now this is the scene where Kali is attacking bull and the cow, but Parikshit Maharaj hasn't come yet. And then the bull and the cow are having a conversation while this is happening. So the personality of religious principles, Dharma, was wandering about in the form of a bull. So Dharma means religion. It also means all virtues, right? And he met the personality of earth in the form of a cow. So the cow represents the earth. So she's called Dharani, Mother Earth, right? Who appeared to grieve like a mother who had lost a child. Now for a cow, the most painful situation for the cow is for her to lose her calf. So, and it is said, amongst all living entities, the pain, the motherhood is strongest amongst the cow. And that's why she is called mother, right? So, and she really is very attached to the calf. So to separate the calf from the cow is extremely painful for her. And she was grieving just like that, as if she lost her calf. She had tears in her eyes, Suta Goswami describes, and the beauty of her body was lost. So thus Dharma questioned the earth as follows. So the bull Dharma is questioning Dharani, the earth, the mother cow, as follows. Dharma asked, Madam, Are you not hale and hearty? So this is Prabhupada's Victorian English, very, very respectful always. So, madam, are you not hale and hearty? So she's inquiring to the welfare of the. So usually, this is how conversations begin with everybody, isn't it? First, we ask about their health. So, and then he asks. He established that she was not healthy. Obviously, she's crying. Then he asks, "Why are you so covered with the shadow of grief? It appears by your face that you have become black." Now, this is what happens when people go through a lot of grief, right? So their face darkens generally as they grow older. This is a fact. I have seen people like this. So and no matter how much of Fair and Lovely or oil of Olay or whatever they put, it's not going to bring. Are you suffering from some internal disease? Or are you thinking of some relative who is away in a distant place? Now, these are points raised which causes the highest, which causes pain in living entities. So we know, right? Janma, Vyadi, Jara, Mrityu. So Vyadi is very painful, right? Prabhupada says, if somebody is sick, we should be very nice to them and help them in various ways, because it's to be understood that they are really clearing their karma. So internal disease is very painful, especially because nobody is able to understand the type of pain or the type of anguish one goes through. And on top of that, there is another anguish, which is the most poignant anguish. In material life, the highest source of happiness, we have various sources of happiness, right? We have happiness in eating, happiness in sleeping, right? But higher than that will be happiness of the having a goal in life, something like that, a worthy goal, or the happiness of the ego, right? For the sake of the ego, people are willing to sacrifice food and drink, isn't it? So amongst all these different levels of happiness, the highest happiness which is attained is described as happiness due to relationships. So this is what even modern science has understood. It is actually, we have the happiness movement nowadays. So they have also understood what Bhagavatam has given long time ago, that actually it's relationships. The level of our happiness depends on the level of relationships which we have with different people, the quality of these relationships. So that establishes that. But interesting is that this highest cause of happiness to us in life, which is relationship, can also simultaneously be the greatest cause of suffering. This very same relationship which gave the highest happiness can at the same time potentially and very much all the time causes the greatest suffering. Why? Because number one, disappointments, and number two, because of loss. Why? Because no relationship in this world is eternal. And that's the problem. We want to have relationship, but we are having relationships with temporary material relationships with different people, which never lasts, right? It's either filled with disappointments, up and downs, or it will be at one point of time relieved from us. It will be forcibly taken away by death. And when that happens, the pain is very painful. To the extent that we have that kind of relationship with that person, to that extent, it will devastate us, the loss of such person. So, and therefore, that's the point. The point here is we should have relationships with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So if relationship is the highest level of happiness, we should have relationships with Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why? Because his relationship is eternal and it comes with us life after life, because only Krishna comes as Paramatma life after life. Right? So Prabhupada says, There are sufferings from internal disease, separation, and from those near and dear, and anxieties for maintaining the status quo, and so forth. So the bull is asking. So Prabhupada says, when the bull and cow, so there's also another point here. Why did Dharma take the form of a bull? And why did earth take the form of a cow? So it's a very, very important analogy for human beings, human society to really understand the importance of these two animals. He could have taken the form of a lizard, for example, or, nowadays dogs are very popular. So everybody, man's best friend is dog. So why didn't virtue take the form of a dog? Or, virtue could take the form of a horse. What other famous pets are there? So, yeah. So, Prabhupada says, when the bull and the cow are in a joyful mood, it is to be understood that the people of the world are also in a joyful mood. So that's very important. Now, if we go anywhere, most places in the world, how do we see how do we see the cows and the bulls? I remember when I went to Vrindavan, they will just walk, forlornly like that, very calm, but they look very sad also. So the point is, this is the state, and that state of these animals directly, proportionately reflects the state of people in this world. So what does that mean for us? So Prabhupada is giving here very deep secrets. The human society, therefore, maintains these two important animals very carefully so that they can wander everywhere in cheerfulness. So the cows and the bulls should be happy. And what makes cows and bulls happy? They certainly don't like to be trapped in a they like to roam freely. They like to graze in the fields, in the green fields. So this is what human society has to ensure, that these cows are protected and kept happy. When they are kept happy, then their mood will reflect into human society directly. The bull and the cow can be protected. So how do we protect this bull and the cow? So that's why Prabhupada says it can be protected simply by the spreading of Brahminical culture as the topmost perfection of all cultural affairs. So that is the reason Prabhupada said, I'm not going to be like any other charity foundation or whatever who is simply addressing the symptom and not the root cause. So therefore, he created ISKCON, a society of God consciousness, which directly addresses the root causes of the problems in this world. And ISKCON's, one of the charters of ISKCON, the 7 objectives of ISKCON, is to spread Vedic culture, and that means Brahminical culture. So the more we preach ISKCON, Krishna consciousness to the world, the more ISKCON develops in this world, the more people will automatically develop Brahminical culture. And when this kind of Vedic culture is already there, automatically people will become environmentalist, automatically people will become animal friendly, automatically people will become energy sufficient, automatically people will become virtuous, automatically people will become kind. So these things are all automatically done. We don't have to do them separately, because it's not going to jive together if it's approached separately. It has to start from the root, right? Like Ayurveda, to treat the disease, you go to the root. So, and there is only one society in the entire world which is doing this, and that's ISKCON. So that's the far-sightedness of Prabhupada based on the deep philosophy of Vedic wisdom. So so Dharma continues. I have lost my 3 legs. So I'm putting here the picture. This is Dharma. Dharma is the embodiment of all virtue, right? I have lost my 3 legs and am now standing on one only. Are you lamenting for my state of existence? He's asking the cow. So we know Dharma or religiosity or virtue stands on 4 legs, the 4 pillars of virtue, right? One is Satyam. Satyam is truthfulness. And the second one is Saucham. Saucham means cleanliness. And cleanliness means cleanliness of the mind, cleanliness of the words, speech, and cleanliness of a body. of course, and also extends to cleanliness of our environment and the clothes we wear and so forth. And the third leg is tapah. No, that's the fourth leg. The third leg is daya, mercy. Mercy means compassion. Mercy means to see all living entities and not cause harm to any living entity. The principle of ahimsa. And the fourth leg is austerity or tapah. So to uphold these other things, one needs to be austere. How to be clean if one cannot maintain austerity, right? Nobody likes to clean sometimes, but for the sake of austerity, we sometimes have to clean. Same thing goes with truthfulness, right? Sometimes we just say lies for convenience. So that is not austerity. So austerity means we uphold the principle for the sake of religiosity, right? So then Prabhupada says, with the progress of the age of Kali, four things, particularly, namely the duration of life, mercy, the power of recollection, that means our memory, and moral or religious principles will gradually diminish. So these things happen. What will diminish? Our life, our ayus. Ayus means the length of life. Previous ages, 100,000, 10,000, 1,000, now 100, and with COVID, maybe even less, and with future strains, probably even less. And Srimad Bhagavatam says, by the end of Kali Yuga, people consider themselves lucky if they could live up to 20 years old. So this is the progress of Kali. So the livelihood will reduce. Mercy. And as their life is reducing, people become more and more selfish. People become more and more cruel. They don't care about other people. They are willing to kill others just for their own. We see so many horrible movies in the West where, if they are stranded in a there was one movie, aeroplane crashed, and then people had no food. So one by one, they killed each other to eat, just to survive. So this is a modern Western culture. This is what Western culture, for all its high-mindedness, so-called high-mindedness, had brought about. Even recently also, not so long ago, we heard how sometimes when riots happen in these countries, right, or some natural disasters happen in these countries, when Typhoon Katrina or some other typhoon happened in the West, there was rampant many shops in US and UK, not in UK, in US, they were ransacked during this typhoon. People took advantage of this kind of natural disasters to go and ransack the stores, to break in and steal. Whereas even, the vestige, if you look at the Eastern civilization, like particularly Japan, when Fukushima disaster happened, right, when tsunamis happened, there was a natural disaster, but there was no crime. Nobody did any kind of crime, and everybody was helping each other. So that culture was still there in an honorable Eastern society. Slowly we are losing it. Because of westernization. India has definitely lost it due to many of its westernizations have taken place. So this is what's happening. Gradually diminish. When 3/4 of the population of the whole world become irreligious, and that's already definitely more than 3/4 of the population of the whole world, what happens? The situation is converted into hell for the animals, poor animals. So they become destroyed, they become killed, their families are riven apart, they are fed horrible things. Nowadays the cows in some of the countries, like in Australia, that's why one of the reasons I don't buy anything from Australia, the milk products especially. So they have the type of food they give the cows, it's actually ground beef. It's they're feeding the cows beef. It's horrible, together with it's mixed with all the grains and everything. So cannibal cows. Of course, the cows don't know about it. So what can we do? So this is horrible. This is really horrible. And then the bull continues. Or are you in great anxiety because henceforward the unlawful meat eaters will exploit you. So, 5,000 years ago, this is unheard of. If someone were to say someone is going to eat the cow, nobody will believe. This is a different age, the Vedic age. And yet Srimad Bhagavatam predicted this, which will happen in Kali Yuga. And now what do we have? We have India, the Vedic country, as the biggest exporter of beef in the world. Can you imagine? So, and that's what Modi was trying to cut down. Well, that's definitely a good step. So to save the cows, definitely it's the first step. So Prabhupada says, those who accept meat without restriction, that means even without sacrifice, they are called mlechas. Mlecha is the definition. The definition of mlecha is people who eat meat without restriction, without sacrifice. And Prabhupada says, in this age of Kali, people will exploit the body of the bull and the cow as they like. And thus they will invite, this is very important, and thus they will invite sufferings of various types. So if we are in any way participating in this kind of exploitation, so the karma will also come down to us. So that's why ISKCON is very, very strongly promoting cow protection. So this is the root of human prosperity and human happiness. If there is no possibility of human happiness or human prosperity, if the cows, none of these modern scientific developments, all this sustainable city, modern infrastructure, renewable energy, food security, and so forth, and all this, none of this is going to come to fruition if this point of cow and bull protection is not going to be addressed. So this is the secret. This is the secret of humanity, which is in the Vedas, which scientists have yet to understand. So, and then the bull continues. Or are you in a sorry plight? Because the demigods are now bereft of their share of sacrificial offerings, because no sacrifices are being performed at present. So the cow and the bull are crucial for the development of sacrifices. Because what sacrifice needs? Sacrifice needs ghee, isn't it? And yogurt and ghee and so many other things, and grains due to the bull's assistance, we get grains. So without this cow and the bull, and we cannot perform sacrifice. And sacrifice doesn't only mean yagya, doesn't only mean fire sacrifice. It means basically any type of effort. For example, nowadays we have the grab culture. Everybody is it's called instant sense gratification without sacrifice. So especially, I mean, if we earn our own money, if we work for the money and then we use the money to spend, that is some form of sacrifice. But then we have a lot of people, especially younger generation, children, who don't really work for their living and who use the money given to them and just to gratify their senses instantly, using the TV, or just, I feel like eating something. No, nobody is bothered to work and offer to the Lord. So nobody is bothered to cook or to produce nice things to offer to the Lord as sacrifice before they enjoy themselves. So when these things are happening, so sacrifices are lost. Now, this cycle of sacrifice is very important, because if there is there are two things. The bull and the cow is one of the root of human prosperity. The second root of human prosperity is the cycle of sacrifice. Now, this is described in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3. Krishna says, I have given these rains. I'm giving you the cycle of sacrifice by which you can please the devas, and by which you can invoke rain, and by which all necessities of life will be produced and sufficiently given. So if the devas are pleased, then automatically there will be abundance. There will automatically be growth. There will be harvest. There won't be pestilence. There won't be need for insecticide, artificial ways. If we can perform sacrifices, Everything will grow perfectly, beautifully. There will not be any need for artificial, horrible methods called Ugra Karma. Ugra Karma means horrible work, right? Creating insecticides, pesticides, genetic modification of foodstuff, and so forth, right? So all these things would not be necessary. So Prabhupada puts a point. The demigods are the servants of the Lord who see to the proper upkeep of the prison house. What's the prison house? This is the prison house. The material world is the prison house, right? Dukhalayam ashashvatam. And we are all in prison because we need to reform. We have misused our free will. We have misused our desire. And therefore we are in here. So these demigods are the superintendents. And they want to see that the rebel living beings who want to survive faithlessly, so that's the problem, isn't it? Nowadays, modern culture, people want to survive faithlessly. They want to do what they want. They want to gratify their senses, but not by performing any sacrifice, rather by exploitation. The problem with human society now is they want to gratify their senses by exploitation rather than by sacrifice. Nobody wants to do any of these things. So, and gradually turn towards, so by the cycle of sacrifice, therefore it's established the cycle of sacrifice. By the gradual performance of these karma kanda activities, they will slowly turn towards the supreme power of the Lord. The system is made such. Why? Because when someone performs sacrifice, they will understand there is no gain without pain, right? No gain without pain. So, and that will give a conducive mindset for them to think further. How can I escape from this pain? And then at the same time, when they're performing sacrifices, they will be working, they will be associating with Brahmana class. And during this association, something the Brahmanas may speak about higher goal of life may come across to the karma kandis. And in this way, it may awaken their curiosity. And and in this way, they will start understanding about higher things. So like that, gradually from karma kanda to karma yoga, and from karma yoga to like that buddhi yoga and bhakti yoga and so forth. So therefore, the system of offering sacrifice is recommended in the scriptures. So that's the reason for karma kanda. It's for the majority of the population who are mad after sense gratification. So Prabhupada says here, he also continues to make the point. Very, very nice purports. So that's why I'm sharing all this. For the devotees, there is no need for performance of prescribed sacrifices because the very life of the devotee is a symbol of sacrifice. So now this is talking about the full devotee. The devotee who is, it can be a grahashta, it can be a brahmachari, it can be any of the varnas. It can be kshatriya, brahmana, doesn't matter. But as long as they are devotee. So what does the devotee do? The devotee works for Krishna, right? And why he works? Because he needs to maintain himself legally, and then he uses that money to maintain his Krishna conscious family, and then he uses that same money to perform sacrifices at home. The home, we are the servants of the Lord in our home. The home is, everything is meant to be for the pleasure of the Lord. If we buy if there are some nice foodstuffs, we cook and offer for the Lord. So it's all for his pleasure, right? We buy the best of incense, the best of ghee, the best of oils, all for the pleasure of the Lord. So this is sacrifice. And on top of that, we serve the deity in the temple. So on top of that, we assist the spreading of the movement of ISKCON all over the world. We help to enlighten other people. So many different devotional services are there. And these are all sacrifices. So therefore, the life of a devotee is already a sacrifice, Prabhupada says. But persons who are engaged in fruitive activities for sense enjoyment alone must perform prescribed sacrifices, because that is the only means to get free from the reaction of all sins committed by fruitive workers. Because fruitive workers are they have no time for bhakti. They are not interested in anything else. So what is the hope for them? Are they condemned? So Krishna doesn't condemn anybody. He gives everybody some chance. So if to the extent that they are degraded, still some chance is given. And this rope which is thrown to even these kind of people is the cycle of sacrifice. So that's the problem in Kali Yuga. Even up to 100 years ago, even up to 50 years ago, even up to 30 years ago, majority of the population of the world understood the concept of sacrifice. I can say Generation X, the old generation, the concept of sacrifice is there. Generation Y, 50%, 50%, I would say. And the current millennium generation and so forth, the concept of sacrifice is rather alien for many of these people. So we will understand why this is happening. Prabhupada is saying, Lord Chaitanya, however, has recommended only one yajna or sacrifice called the Sankirtan yajna, the chanting of Hare Krishna, in which everyone can take part. Thus, both devotees and fruitive workers can derive equal benefit from the performances of Sankirtan Yajna. So this is the amazing breakthrough of this Yajna, Sankirtan Yajna. Now, if we ask sense gratifiers to come and do Bhakti Seva, it's not because they don't understand the culture. They may think this is sectarian or this is idol worship. So it's not going to be easy. Whereas we have two powerful weapons in Lord Chaitanya's movement. Actually, three. We have the books of Prabhupada, which is like the Brihad Mridanga, right? Which is very powerful. Okay, the three weapons are, number one, Prasadam. Prasadam automatically will attract people. But then, not everybody may like Prasadam. You may give certain things to them and they say, no, this is not as good. I have tasted better. They will say like that. So Prasadam may not be for everybody. So for Prasadam to work to the maximum advantage, the person who is eating the Prasadam has to relish it. If we give bad food and call that Prasadam to people and somebody eats it, they will get benefit, but because they don't appreciate the Prasadam, they will offend the Prasad. So, and in that way, the benefits will be delayed. So Prasadam that's why Prabhupada was very particular. Sunday feast is superb. It's called a feast, not just Sunday food for life or anything. It's Sunday feast. It is meant to really attract the people. And therefore, Prasadam distribution is in that. But Prasadam distribution takes time, takes a lot of organization. It's not so easy and it may not reach everybody. So therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced Sankirtan movement, Sankirtan Yagya. Even simply by Sankirtan, the beauty of Sankirtan is there is no hard and fast rules and there is no loss. There is no offense also. Even if somebody hears jokingly, they are saying Hare Krishna. Even if deriving, even if they are making fun, like how, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was born, when he appeared on earth, everybody went to the Ganga to take bath and everybody was chanting Hare, Hare. And it's described that even the Muslims were chanting Hare, Hare. They are making fun of the Hindus. Hare, Hare, you're chanting like that, they are making fun. But even that is accepted. There is no loss. There is no offense directly taken, right? So it is very powerful. So this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement of Sankirtan is the very powerful yagya which can attract both devotees and at the same time non-devotees. Even if the non-devotees is inimical, even if the non-devotees doesn't like the Sankirtan, even if they close their ears, still they can hear because the hearing is difficult to block. Still they will hear Hare Krishna somewhere, somehow. So in that way, they will benefit. So that's why one of the best ways, that's why Prabhupada stressed very much on Sankirtan Yagya. Then only came food for life later on as an additional adjunct, right? So this is the main thing, main bread and butter. And on top of that, with Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati's advent, what he did, he put a microphone on this Sankirtan Yagya and expanded it all over the world. So his logic, he called, if I play one mridanga, if 2 people play 2 mridanga, if 10 people play 10 mridanga, how far will the sound travel? It will travel maybe 10 blocks, right? 1 mile at least. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati says, when you have money, print books and send these books all over the world. And he called these books Brihat Mridanga, the great drum, the big drum, the large giant drum, where it can penetrate every corner of the world. So that's why book distribution is extremely, extremely important, right? Books are the basis, purity is the essence. Books are the basis, purity is the essence. Preaching is the, what do you call? Books are the basis. Purity is the, purity is the force, preaching is the essence, and utility is the principle. Right. So basically, this is very important. Therefore, either way, the point is there should be sacrifice. And even in Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 11 or 12, chapter 11, I think. No, chapter 10, I think. Chapter 10. Krishna says, amongst sacrifices, I am chanting of the Hare Krishna Japa. I am the chanting. So chanting is the king of all sacrifices. So then the bull continues. Or are you sad? Are you grieving for all the living beings because of their sufferings due to famine and drought? So this is what has happened. Because the cow and the bull have been not taken care of, and due to that, what has happened, sacrifices also has been broken. And because there's no sacrifice, what is happening? We see now rampant drought and famine happening all over the world. 500,000 people die of malnutrition every year. And this has been going on for many, many years. And this doesn't come in the news. So where else 5,000 people die and it will come into the news due to COVID. Why? Because the economy is disturbed. So that is the secret. Where else nobody cares for this. 500,000 deaths every year due to malnutrition, and it's going on still, despite all the modern developments. So are you feeling compunction? Then Dharma continues to ask, are you feeling compunction for the unhappy women and children who are left forlorn by unscrupulous person? So when famine and drought is happening, when there's no more dharma, when dharma is only standing on one leg and virtue is almost destroyed, so what will happen? It will become the rule of the powerful. So the survival of the fittest, right? The saying goes. So who are the fittest? Therefore, it's a man's world. And this man's world, the men are all unscrupulous nowadays in Kali Yuga. And Prabhupada says, everybody is a Shudra. The Brahminical, because the Brahmana is gone. No longer the Brahmana is proper. And there's no longer virtue in this world. So men have become fallen. And when men become fallen, they exploit. And who will they exploit? They will exploit the weaker sex. So they exploit women. So this has happened. So lots and lots of unhappy women and children. You know, I'm shocked to hear, I recently read that there is baby dumping. Every month, there is about, I forgot the number, 50, yeah, 50. Every month in Malaysia, every month, there are at least 50 babies being dumped, newborn babies. Some are alive, some are dead, unfortunately. every month, 50 in this country, and that's just those recorded. And that's in Malaysia. Can you imagine in other places? So then Dharma continues. Or are you unhappy because the goddess of learning is being handled by Brahmanas addicted to acts against the principles of religion? So nowadays we have many Brahmanas who are addicted to various sinful activities. They are money-minded, interested in, we have e-yagya, we have, there was a joke last time anyway. So it's basically money. Actually, the Brahmanas should only take the cost. Because last time, the Brahmanas didn't have to do anything. They were the VIPs. They just have to come, sit, officiate, do the yagya, and walk away. Because everything else was prepared by the king, or by the Kshatriyas, or by the Grihasthas. But nowadays, no one is capable of preparing the yagya and everything. So the poor Brahmana has to prepare all the yagya material and everything. So at least his cost should be, covered. But along the way, it goes beyond just cost. So the Brahmana starts to see, why don't I make a profit? So this we saw also. This is not new. It actually began during the time of even Lord Krishna. When he was there, the Brahmanas started to become degraded. The one of the earliest, of course, even before that, if you remember the pastimes of Daksha, the Brahmanas were cursed, right? That they will all become Mayavadis and all that. And even in the time of Dronacharya, you can see how Dronacharya, he was a very good Brahmana, Paka Brahmana. But for the sake of his son, Ashwatthama, he sold himself because Ashwatthama didn't have food. The one problem with Dronacharya, he was very attached to his son. So that was his one problem. Because he was very attached to his son, he became clouded, illusioned. And when he couldn't take the pain of seeing that his son was being insulted or didn't have sufficient food stuff or whatever. So therefore, it made him take, and he had a double problem. He also was insulted by Drupada. He was disappointed because the kingly class, the Kshatriya class, was supposed to maintain the Brahmanas. So when Dronacharya went to ask King Drupada for charity, Drupada failed on his aspect. He had an issue. He didn't want to recognize Drona as his equal. So he was willing to give charity, but he also insulted Dronacharya in the process. And Dronacharya became very disappointed with the Kshatriya class. So out of desperation, out of his attachment, he was forced to take service under Dhritarashtra. So that was how the Brahmanas, example of a Brahmana who gave in. But that was his only fault. In all other aspects, he was Paka Brahmana. And then later on in Srimad Bhagavatam, towards the end of this Canto 1, we will hear how in Kali Yuga, the Brahmana class was completely fallen. By the cursing of Parikshit Maharaj, the Brahmana class condemned itself. And that's what happened. Or are you sorry to see that the Brahmanas have taken shelter of administrative families that do not respect Brahminical culture? So this is the problem also. So Prabhupada says, the administrative heads as a class will condemn the tenets of Vedic wisdom. Nowadays, we don't have any administrative people who believe in Vedic ideas, isn't it? So, but because everywhere is like that, the Brahmanas, out of necessity to protect their families and all that, they take service from these people. And when they take service from these people, they are forced to bootlick them, right? They are forced to flatter this kind of second-class people, third-class people, and bootlick them. And while they are doing this, along the way, they get degraded because they are taking charity from these people. And at the same time, they lose their virtue. And in this way, the Brahmanas completely become fallen. They become purchased by these unscrupulous administrators. They become their own personal pet brahmanas. So like that, nowadays in India also, every rich family will have a pet guru or a pet brahmana who will come and do seva, service in their house. But they have to make sure that whatever they are saying is following the tune of the rich people. Otherwise, they become unpopular. Then they said, okay, I get rid of you, get lost. I'll get a new brahmana. I'll get a new guru. So that is the problem nowadays in Kali Yuga. Okay. So Prabhupada says, in the age of Kali, godless civilization will create so many so-called religious societies in which the personality of Godhead will be directly or indirectly defied. So that's due to the fallen Brahmanas, because when the Brahmanas lose their culture and lose their sense, they start to exploit, because the only thing they know is scripture, is religion, and to get money they will sell that religion. It's like prostitution, right? Like when the lady, she's desperate, she has nothing else to earn livelihood, she will sell her own body. So the Brahmanas also, out of desperation, they don't have anything else to sell. Therefore, they sell their religiosity, and therefore it becomes exploited. So this is what happens. So Prabhupada, Dharma continues. The so-called administrators or Shatra Bandhun, so it's supposed to be Kshatriya, but the so-called administrators are called Shatra Bandhu, friends of the Kshatriyas. That means they are not really Kshatriyas, but they are trying to behave like one, but they are not really following the tenets of the Kshatriyas. So these so-called administrators, because of being misguided by the Brahmanas, because of they losing the secrets of social happiness by protecting the cow and upholding Brahminical culture and upholding Vedic wisdom, because they have made lots of wrong decisions along the way, they are now bewildered by the influence of this age of Kali, and thus they have put all state affairs into disorder. So we can see lah, right? Hashtag Krajan Bodo and all that. So this is going on. So are you now lamenting this disorder? Dharma is asking. Is this the reason you are crying? So Prabhupada says, nowadays they are promoted to such exalted posts. So this kind of administrators, they are promoted to exalted posts simply by votes of the people who are themselves fallen. So it's like the fallen vote for the fallen, and then they have a fallen government. So it's the people, the government of the people, by the people, for the people. So it's more like the government of the fallen, for the fallen, by the fallen. So is there any wonder why the democracy has failed in this country or in any other country eventually? So nowadays they are therefore this is what's happening, right? Therefore, by the influence of the age of Kali, everywhere, politically, socially, or religiously, everything is topsy-turvy. And therefore, for the sane man, it is all regrettable. So that's why Prabhupada says, this world is not fit for a gentleman. It's horrible. Lots of horrible things are happening. We have made it like that eventually by the effect of Kali Yuga. So then Dharma continues. Now the general populace does not follow the rules and regulations for eating, sleeping, drinking, mating, etc. And they are inclined to perform such anywhere and everywhere. So nobody is watching about the rules. For example, according to Vedic society, for many activities in life, why these rules are there? It's not because of anything, it's to regulate our senses. So these rules, or yams and yamas, yams and niyamas, do's and don'ts, like in yoga, in anything, in fact in any activity in life, there are always do's and don'ts. So nowadays the modern concept is freedom. I want to be free. So everybody wants to be free. Nobody wants rules. Let us do whatever we want. So because of these things, everything is spoiled. Even when you play a game, if you play football, there are rules, isn't it? If you play badminton, there are rules. If you want to, so similarly, even in cooking, there are rules. Certain things shouldn't be done. For example, according to Ayurveda, honey should not be heated. If it's heated, it becomes poison. So like that, there are many rules, but nowadays nobody bothers. And you know, there's also other Ayurvedic rules, like fruits should not be eaten with grains. So like that, and you know, one should not have a heavy meal after 6. In fact, ideally, all meals should be stopped. So like that, it goes on. So there are rules and regulations, and you know, one should try to maintain the mode of goodness. So, but nowadays, nobody is bothered. Anytime they sleep up to 12 o'clock in the daytime, and drinking, they drink all kinds of things, and mating, it just goes on everywhere. So nowadays we see more and more horrible things, social ills and all that. So that's happening. So are you unhappy because of this? Because these rules and regulations are no longer followed, right? And then Dharma Prabhupada continues. In this age, the fathers and the guardians are not happy with the behavior of their wards. So majority, you know, the leaders are not happy with the population. The father is not happy with the children, or the mother is not happy with the children. So why this is happening? They should know that so many innocent children are victims of bad association awarded by the influence of this age of Kali. So that's the big problem, bad association. When the children are born, it's not that they were born liking, wanting to drink beer, or wanting to smoke cigarettes, or wanting to eat bad food, right? If you give a baby an apple and a flesh, which one will the baby go for? It will go for the apple, right? So, but it's a matter of how the child has been trained. Since birth, the child has been trained with meat eating. Since birth, the child has been trained to watch TV. Since birth, the child has been trained either by the family members or by society. Actually, the worst thing is when the child goes to school, because majority of his bad association is received from school, and that's the problem. So it's difficult to control the bad association of the school unless the parent is really full-time behind the backs. It's not easy nowadays, especially in Kali Yuga, almost impossible. So one has to be careful in making these decisions in life. What kind of association are we subjecting the children to? And so they should know that this bad association is the main problem. So Prabhupada says, we know from Srimad Bhagavatam, there was but one victim like Ajamila in those days. Now, Ajamila is a victim of bad association. He was a Brahmana, born Brahmana, everything was perfect for him. He was growing, and he happened to one day see a bad scene. What did he see? He saw a low-class woman embracing and kissing another man in public. So when he saw this, his mind became disturbed. So lust awoke in his heart. Now this can be due to karma and all that, but still, that's the reason in those days society was very orthodox. So orthodoxy has its pros and cons. The cons of orthodoxy is that, you know, orthodoxy means basically very strict religious strict religious following, right? So traditional. So the advantage of, sorry, the disadvantage of orthodoxy is, due to unscrupulous people take advantage, and then there is a lot of silent suffering. So the weaker people, like the children or the wife, they suffer, and therefore we have women freedom and feminist movement and all that eventually that came out of that, simply due to the exploitation of the unscrupulous men. But at the same time, orthodoxy also has its advantage. The advantage is, in those days, if anybody wants to do a sinful act, it is because it's in society, it is condemned. it is usually done in secret or in a very isolated manner. Like even in India nowadays also, in many villages, if people want to eat meat, they have to go to one corner of the section where it's like in that village where only in that one small corner meat is being sold. So it's basically looked down at, and people, you don't want to be caught in that street. Otherwise, we will lose 1 hour. So it's secretly bought. So that kind of protection was there. So in one sense, it's a larger protection which protects society from further degradation. So that was the problem. So nowadays, like same thing. If someone wants to commit adultery, like if somebody is married and they want to have a affair, these things were condemned in those days. Society would not accept. The society was such that the family, the relations were all close, and nobody would accept this kind or condone this kind of behavior, and they will be ostracized and isolated by these people. So the fear of being ostracized and being isolated was very strong. So therefore, people were very careful. But again, at the same time, people may exploit this, and innocent people may suffer. But that is exploitation. It's a different story. But the advantage is these things were checked. But nowadays, the adultery is common. When Prince Charles committed adultery, and Diana was, the Pamela, what's the name? Camilla. He committed adultery with Camilla. It's public, and it became accepted. And then people say, if Prince Charles can commit adultery, I also can commit adultery. So, but previously in the Victorian ages, adultery was a sin. The priests were all going around telling you shouldn't, and it's bad. But after the kings and the leaders of society started to do this kind of things, then it's common. So everybody is doing it now, and very soon nobody will even think, and it's already happening. People don't think twice about living together without marriage. People change boyfriends and girlfriends like how they are changing clothes. One day they will wear one shirt, another day they'll wear another shirt. So in the same way, they are doing this. And it's considered fashion, the vogue. We are free. Let's not be like this. So that's what's happening now. So Prabhupada says here, right? Those days, there was only one example like Ajamila. But in this age of Kali, the poor innocent students are daily victims of cinema, which attract men and women only for sex indulgence. So this is going on. So the more nowadays we have Netflix, we have iFlix, we have all kinds of nonsense, and 99, in the internet, 70% of all websites in the world, internet, is pornography. So that's a survey done, and 70%. So if we have aliens who are monitoring human beings, they would think that these human beings are crazy about mating, because 70% of whatever they're doing is about mating. So that's happening at the moment. And so it's very powerful. So the internet has to be controlled with children, and TV is another big problem which has to be controlled. So media nowadays is very difficult. Previously, it was much controlled. Nowadays, with the advent of 5G and 6G and whatnot, it's rapidly declining. So these are some of the challenges of Kali Yuga. So due to all this, Mother Earth is crying. She has already 5,000 years ago, she already saw all this going to happen in this world. So she's already crying she's lamenting for each and every soul who is suffering and who's being degraded. Can you imagine her pain? So then Dharma asks, "O Mother Earth," and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, incarnated himself as Lord Sri Krishna just to unload your heavy burden. Now, a lot of this was already happening in Dwapara Yuga, though not to the extent that is happening now in Kali Yuga. So that's the reason there were a lot of demonic kings at that time. And Krishna came personally to remove this burden. towards the end. When did he come? He came towards the end of Dwapara Yuga. So similarly, in Kali Yuga also, Krishna will come towards the end of Kali Yuga as Kalki, and then he will remove the heavy burden of the earth. And thanks and mercifully, Kali Yuga is much shorter in duration compared to Dwapara Yuga. It's half the duration, right? So the earth did not have to go through too long. All his activities here are transcendental, and they cement the path of liberation. So this is a technical word here, nirvana vilambitani. So usually the word nirvana is not really used so much. In fact, in the entire Bhagavatam, I searched, it was only used about 8 times. So because the word nirvana usually refers to the Buddhist concept, where it is merging into the Viraj river, which is basically spiritual suicide. We deny the identity of the soul and we go into, it's like it's like going into coma. The soul is being put into coma. I don't want to suffer. Therefore, because I don't know anything higher, I put my soul into coma. So that is nirvana according to the Buddhist nihilistic philosophy. But here the word nirvana vilambitani is used. So it's said that Prabhupada gives in his purport that Srila Jiva Goswami and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti both have described that the word nirvana vilambitani doesn't mean to nirvana's liberation. It doesn't just mean liberation. It means that which minimizes the value of liberation. So therefore, the sentence here should read, all Krishna's activities here are transcendental and they cement the path, they cement that path which leads to such a high level which minimizes liberation. That means it's beyond liberation. So that is going to the spiritual world. That is higher than liberation. So then Dharma continues. You are now bereft of his presence. So that lotus feet of Krishna is no longer on earth. You are probably now thinking of those activities and feeling sorry in their absence. So they are, the word they are means Krishna and his devotees. The Pandavas are no longer here. The gopis are no longer there. The queens of the Dwaraka are no longer there. Krishna is no longer there. So many of all this are all is gone. So you must be lamenting due to all these things. Dharma is asking to Dharani. Now these questions are very similar to the questions asked by the sages of the Naimisharanya forest in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. They ask, they all come and they ask Suta Goswami, please tell us, Kali Yuga has come. We are performing the sacrifices for thousands of years and just so that Kali Yuga is mitigated. Otherwise, Kali Yuga will be much worse. So we are doing this, but we are all covered with soot. We are black, completely covered with soot. And we don't see how it's going to stop Kali. Can you tell us where everybody is going to go for shelter now that Krishna is gone? All virtue has left with Krishna. What can be done now? So the answer that Suta Goswami says is, at that time, we should take shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna has incarnated as Srimad Bhagavatam, and Krishna is still here on earth as Sankirtan movement. In the future, he will come. 500 years ago, Krishna came again and propagated the chanting of the holy name. So Srimad Bhagavatam already was there 5,000 years ago, and chanting of the holy name was inaugurated 500 years ago. So we are right in the best time. So to take advantage of this and quickly go back to Godhead so that we don't have to experience anything further in this Kali Yuga. So then, Dharma continues, Mother, you are the reservoir of all riches. So Prabhupada says that here, the earth is actually already fully, it's complete on its own. There is nothing lacking on earth. It is simply, there is enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed, right? The saying goes. So Prabhupada says, every planet in this universe is created perfectly by the Lord. It is simply due to our misuse, right? So not only in this earth fully equipped with all the riches for the maintenance of its inhabitants, but also when the Lord descends, the earth becomes even more glorified. We heard previously, right, in previous chapters, how the earth was so abundant. Rivers were overflowing, gems were overflowing. There were so many gems. Gold was everywhere, right? The all the herbs in the forest, even during Maharaj Yudhishthira Maharaj's rule, because of a righteous king, right? Uh, Plants were fully giving their produce. Milk was pouring everywhere. So this was the abundance of earth, especially when the Lord was present. So then Prabhupada says here, isn't it? Oops. When the Lord descends to the earth, the whole earth becomes so enriched with all kinds of opulences that even the denizens of heaven worship it with all affection. And then Dharma continues. Please inform me the root cause of your tribulations by which you have been reduced to such a weak state. So what is the cause of all these things? So Dharma has already mentioned, he's already indirectly saying, this is the cause, this is the cause, that is the cause. He's already saying, is it due to this, is it due to that? But then still he's asking this question. And it's a very, very interesting answer, which we will hear from Dharani, the mother cow. Very, very interesting answer. When I heard this answer from Dharani, I was like, oh, last time when I read it, so we will not talk about it today, not enough time. We will discuss it next week. So let me just complete one last two slides. So in Kali Yuga, Dharma continues. I think that the powerful influence of time, which conquers the most powerful, have forcibly taken away all your fortune, which was adored even by the demigods. So Dharma is telling to cow, Mother Earth, that due to the effect of Kali Yuga, all this has been forcibly taken away from you. So we heard from Dharma how degradation of Dharma, degradation of virtue, leads to the exploitation of the cow and the bull. And therefore, the cycle of sacrifice is stopped. And therefore, rampant famine and drought is experienced in this earth. And due to the degradation of Dharma also, we heard how exploitation of women and children takes place, because the custodians of Dharma are no longer custodians of Dharma. They have become exploiters of Dharma. And corrupted Brahmanas and corrupted leaders. So due to corrupted Brahmanas comes corrupted leaders and corrupted, and due to that, the degradation of Varnashram follows. So no longer anything is proper already. And due to that, due to all this, what can we expect? The general populace will definitely be led astray. And due to that, there will be predominance of bad association in this entire world. And due to that, we have children, we have families, and when they are exposed to bad association, then we can imagine the cycle will continue and it will only become larger and larger. So this is Kali Yuga. So then in response, the earth deity, Dharani, which is the mother cow, thus replied to the personality of religious principles. She says, O Dharma, whatever you have inquired from me shall be known to you. I shall try to reply to all those questions. And she continues, once you too were maintained by your four legs, and you increased happiness all over the universe by the mercy of the Lord. So she's indirectly telling the main cause is actually due to you not being protected also. Dharma, when Dharma falls, when the bull is no longer able, then naturally the cow will be exploited, isn't it? So the bull defends the cow. So when the bull has only one leg, how is the bull able to defend the cow? So it is due to the degradation of Dharma. So Prabhupada says, this is the last slide. The principles of religion are laid down by the Lord himself. So it's a very important point here. The principles of religion are laid down by the Lord himself. and the executor of such laws is Dharmaraj or Yamaraj. Happiness in the world depends proportionately on the maintenance of the religious principles, individually or collectively. So this is a very important point we need to understand. And Prabhupada continues, the best part of valor is therefore to maintain the principles despite all kinds of odds. So that's our tapasya. So therefore, truthfulness, saucham, daya, and tappa has to be maintained even if it's difficult, even if there are all kinds of overwhelming odds, because this will ensure that we are stable and peaceful in our life. And this will also ensure the blessing. This will open up the mercy to flow, right? And thus one can be happy during the span of life and ultimately return to Godhead. So Prabhupada therefore establishes ISKCON on these four regulative principles of no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and no gambling. So these four are the foundations or the pillar of religion by which we can develop bhakti and by which we can go back to God. Okay, so with that, I'd like to thank you very much for listening to this narration of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki.